All right. Okay. How you do? So anyway, do you currently live in Germany?
Yep. Yes.
Ah,
I spent some time with Joe. We just thinking about 10, 11 years ago. And
yes. Wow.
then we parted ways and I left to Hanover, which is kind of in the middle of Germany.
Ah, wow. No way. And to go over there, you were given, it was a job opportunity that took you over there. Was it to study?
Yep. Yep. So it's to carry on studying. So biology, immunology. I thought I'll stay here for 3 years, but then I met my future wife, and now I'm still here.
Always the case. Always the case.
Yeah.
So obviously you absolutely love it out there. I was just looking at the numbers for at the moment with COVID-19 over there, and just talking to Joe just before you came onto the chat.
Yeah.
And it was blowing my mind because with Germany, they seem to be at this stage as we're doing this on the 20th of April, because it constantly changes. It's like, I feel like I need to give a date because I feel like in about 3 days, this will all be completely different. And we'll probably know a little bit more about it, or, or the situation may have changed. But as it stands, Germany are starting to slowly loosen the lockdown that they've put on. Obviously not fully loosen it, which I don't think any country will do. But it's crazy with the numbers because they have got a considerable more amount of tests that have been done in Germany currently. But the as opposed to England, you know what I mean? England's tests, I think they're only at about 500,000 they've done so far. Whereas Germany's is about 1,700,000. Do you think that testing is the reason for Germany being in a way better position?
Yeah, it looks like it. So everything you hear in the media, and also what you can kind of interpret by yourself as well, it seems to be that Germany's got they started a bit earlier. So when it was about 4 or 5 weeks ago, just before the lockdown really started, I remember the UK was saying that Germany was 2 weeks in front of us. Or that the UK was saying, I think it was Johnson was saying Germany's 2 weeks further along the timeline. I was thinking, if you kind of look at the signs and the death rates and how it's the infection spreading, I thought this probably isn't true. I remember talking to my mates and my parents as well and saying, what's happening now probably should be what's happening in the UK. But I think they probably just missed it a bit. And then maybe it was the case where the UK was really 2 weeks behind Germany and the rest of the countries. But somehow, probably because the UK weren't testing like Germany was, they kind of missed it. It spread very quickly, and then they can't really contain it. Whereas Germany's testing almost everyone who could have the disease.
Yeah, it definitely seems that way, doesn't it? Is it? And
yeah.
The most unfortunate part about it is the government. I think it was about 2 weeks ago. It's all molding into one at the moment, being on lockdown. But I think the UK government said they were going to, by the end of April, be testing 100,000 people a week. I think it was 100 a week or 100,000 people.
Yeah, I read that as well.
And I just don't think we're anywhere near that. And it's just so strange how they can't seem to get on top of it in the UK, or they don't seem to be getting on top of it in the UK. It's so strange.
Yeah, I was wondering what the I'm assuming it can't be like physical scientists pipetting in the machines, because the UK has probably got at least the same number of like PCR machines and scientists that can perform the tests. And then you've got the question of if they're validated or not, because what I can do in my lab, I can pipette and do research wearing a white lab coat, but I don't have this validated certificate. So this means that everything's all tested and proven, that everything's sticking to all the guidelines, which can be quite complicated, which is different to normal research. Maybe this could be one of the reasons where the UK government's really strict in this, I don't know. Or the other reason could be the consumables. So these kits, it consists of 8 or 9 components, and maybe 2 or 3 of them are really hard to get.
Yeah,
In the
and
numbers that the UK needs.
What do you think the validity of the PCR testings is for the COVID or the SARS-2, Graham? Is the PCR the right test for it?
So practically, once you've got your sample in your hand, then it is fairly sensitive. Of course, it's not perfect. So you can see very, very small amounts of viral RNA. Practically, I've never touched or knowingly touched or been in contact with someone with the virus. I don't have the biosafety level clearance to do this, to actually work physically with the virus.
yeah,
But I think the PCR tests, for the research wise, they're fine. From the little experience I've got so far. But I think what could be happening, if you read some of the papers that have been published recently, it looks like they're having false negatives. But I'm not really sure. It's kind of a different world, because in the lab I know I've got a certain amount of it, I can find it again, I can make it go up or down in cell culture, in theory, or my colleagues can do this, or other scientists throughout Germany, Europe, the world can do this. But when you're really taking swabs from patients, I guess this is a different story. So maybe if there's very, very low levels, maybe it's quite hard to swab the right place. So maybe you just by bad luck miss it. Or it could become degraded, or there's probably lots of factors there.
yeah, it's crazy is that as well, because there's so much that rides on it to a certain degree. I feel like they're going to have to almost double test certain people to a certain degree, you know, especially with antibody tests, you know what I mean? Because like they were saying, I was listening to something the other day and they were talking about if you've had COVID-19 and something within like 7 days or like a week after it, you might not even show any antibodies. So like you could be tested for have an antibody test and you might not come up with anything, you know, but then they could test you 2 weeks after that, where I feel like a double test is going to be plausible, but even then, it's logistically, you've got to imagine you've got to think about what everybody's actually having to go through right now with the numbers of testing that's going to have to that is happening and what's going to have to happen.
Yeah, I think quite a lot of countries, they do. I think you need to be proven negative twice by this PCR test. So there they look for the this RNA sequence. I think it's 2 negative tests you need to have.
Sorry, RNA. Just explain. I think I know exactly what that is, but if just for people that are listening, what is RNA?
So just like if you can imagine a book, like quite a sizable book, it's got lots of words and letters. And the RNA, similar to DNA, is just the arrangement of letters in there. So you can look for a specific, just like if you type into Google, you're looking for a certain passage of a book or a song. And then if this certain passage is there, then you know you've got this combination of letters and words, and you know you've got this specific virus or protein.
Yeah, so you know if you've got MERS or if you know you've got COVID-19.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Well, you were saying I think that you've just switched into virology. Has that been sort of forced on you due to the pandemic, or was that a choice?
No, it's quite a crazy change. So I spent 10 years at the Veterinary University in Hanover, and then I decided to move slightly more into infections because this is what I really enjoyed doing. So I found this position, started on the 1st of January, then spent a couple of weeks in America and got back just before beds are an exchange program to work in a lab there, and got back just before it really started. So I wanted to. Yeah, so I'm actually working with norovirus, but because things have changed and priorities have changed, now I'm involved in the SARS work.
Right. So just to interject, just to sort of get your background again. So what did you do for 10 years while you were working?
I moved to the fish department. So I worked with fish diseases. I wanted to find out how we can stop fish like carp from being infected by bacteria or viruses, and to see how we can boost their immune system.
Wow.
Did you succeed, or was that a strong word?
I don't know, but maybe I explained a few things, but I wouldn't say I saved millions of fish by doing this work.
Yeah, completed it. I absolutely bossed it.
It's done. Next.
Yeah.
Oh, that's great, man. That's great. I wouldn't even know where to start with something like that. So infections and things you've been interested in for quite some time, and
Yes,
all of a sudden, just through coincidence, or he's come to a time where we've got this massively infectious virus, and you've ended up in the exact lab that is dealing with that in Germany. Is that right? Is that
So I moved labs to work in a research institute, which is linked to the hospital in Hanover, or one of the hospitals. It works on viruses, and then because of the situation and the number of patients that we're getting, it's become the most important virus infectious agents in the world.
Yeah.
Just not just the lab I work in, loads of labs are working on it, even if they've got almost nothing to do with viruses previously. Every second lab has switched directions, focusing on this.
Yeah, you can totally imagine that would be the case as well. You know, you can't have something so global, so that has affected the whole planet to a certain degree. Not all of the planet, but I think it might have touched pretty much everywhere. But you can imagine that everyone is working on this right now. Who can work on it? Everyone is working on it. And companies even companies that aren't labs, that manufactured and engineered other things are now manufacturing and making ventilators and things like that. The whole world has completely switched, changed, and is now currently working on this, which to a certain degree, it is, well, for us, it's amazing, because I feel like, and I'm hopeful that will push faster results, which is what we need. It could cause, I mean, the faster you work on something, the more you might make mistakes. Mistakes might be made, but I think I think with this, what's going on, mistakes are going to be made, and mistakes have been made. You know, there's already people pointing fingers, and we're not even nowhere near the end of it yet. You know, a lot of people get interviewed, and then they will be asked these questions, and they will come back with a rebuttal of, look, this needs to be talked about. Mistakes need to be talked about in 2 or 3 years' time. We're right in the thick of this now. This can't be something that we ponder over now. We're trying to figure this out now. So yeah, it's weird. It's crazy at the moment.
Yeah.
What exactly are you working on, Graham, to do with it? What's the, you know, what exactly are you working on?
I'm only playing a tiny part in this, but the lab I'm a member of, and the labs that are surrounding us, just like probably every second or third bioscience lab, are working on repurposing drugs. Is one aspect, because there's thousands of drugs that are already FDA approved, or they're already approved, so doctors can administer them to patients. And if you're lucky, then some of these may also work for this virus. Instead of going down the other route and trying to design totally new drugs, because this will take a long time to design them, test them, and get them approved that they're safe to be used. Because obviously you don't want to inject people with something and that kills them or makes the situation worse. And this can take quite a long time.
Which is where mistakes could be made, and and they're quite huge mistakes to be made. And this is why, you know, when people people are looking for a way out or looking for a vaccine, and vaccines, I think everybody knows now, the idea of vaccinations. A vaccine for something is normally takes about 10 to 13. Sometimes it used to take 15 years to come up with something that would work and would be safe to mass produce and distribute to people. But I think people are looking for that, and they want that because it's the answer to it. But I can't imagine that's gonna come anytime soon. I think myself, and I'm no one, I think the answer lies in obviously social distancing, testing, and maybe a drug that will successfully treat it.
Yeah, I think ideally you're right, vaccines would be the ideal case. I don't know how long it will take. I guess with so many labs and the new techniques that are coming out, maybe it will only take 6, 9, 12 months. But then, of course, you've got to vaccinate hundreds of millions of people, maybe even a couple of billion. So even if it's ready...
As well, if people want it as well. I've already seen people, I've already seen people that don't believe in vaccination saying they're not going anywhere near a vaccine. I think it's so ridiculous that people even consider this, but people do. They don't think that this is even real. And not only is it not real, but if there's an answer, if there's something to protect them from it, they're not going to have it because they don't believe in it. It's so crazy.
Yeah. I think this has been the case for a while now, I think. With all the discredited reports in the UK, was it 20 years ago, I think, or even longer? There's always a fraction of society. Well, I think it's good that people can choose what they want to do. I think with vaccinations, it's quite a good topic, especially if you've got a small kid, that they seem to be sick. Whenever they go to nursery, they're sick every few weeks. That's a feeling you get anyway. Of course, if you can vaccinate against some of this, then you can save quite a few days of sickness and high temperatures. Of course, other more serious conditions. I think it's Germany's thinking about. So when you go to the schools now, so when you're 4 or 5 years old, your kids normally should go to school. They're just starting to have like compulsory vaccinations. So your child needs to be vaccinated so they can attend the school. I'm not 100% sure how far this is along. But I know with our nursery, we had to have his vaccination card and he needed these vaccinations.
I heard something very similar for the UK is in the works and could happen. Yeah. I mean, how do you feel about that, Joe? How do you feel about it?
Ooh, social liberties, isn't it? I mean, if you're going to stop people, especially kids with education, going to school because they're not vaccinated, I don't know. I don't know if that sits right with me, really, to be honest. But I also see the argument for vaccinations. So I'm a little bit on the fence. I've been reading a little bit more about where the anti-vax movement has come from and how much science is actually based behind the anti-vax movement, and it's all been sort of disputed. And it was due to autism, wasn't it? And they thought that it increased autism, and therefore an anti-vax movement gained popularity. But the problem is with the mandatory vaccinations is if you start making something mandatory, the people that were anti-vax in the first place will see that more as a reason not to. So it will inspire them not to further. So it doesn't really work, doesn't mandatory vaccinations. But I can't actually believe Germany are already implementing it, to be fair. That's fair enough.
Yeah, I think that I'm not 100% sure, just maybe it's on a local level or I don't know if it's a national level. But yeah, I think just what you were saying, Joe, I think education is probably the best way forward, and to educate people that maybe not to really force them, but to encourage them, or at least show them all the facts. I think if you have all the facts, you can make your own informed choice. And if it's clearly presented, then I guess over 95% of people would choose to vaccinate their kids.
Yeah, I think so. I think I think it's a small percentage. It's so easy to think of this being a large percentage of people, but I think it would be a small percentage of people that would, even if they were given it by a credible source, and they would argue if it is a credible source, they would still be like, I don't believe it still, and they still wouldn't do it. But I think, like anything, it's easy to see. You always see the bad before you see the good, and I believe there's way more good than there is bad. So I think when you see people, like in the UK, there's been people that seem to have been breaking the lockdown laws. I generally feel like 99.5% of the people are actually sticking to social distancing, but you just see the bad stick out like a sore thumb. So I feel like those people that wouldn't choose a vaccination are only minute. I don't think there's a large percentage of the population of each country that wouldn't actually do it. For myself, anyway, I know that it's each to their own with it, but I've vaccinated my children, and I feel like if there's a valid, well-tested COVID-19 vaccination, I would have that vaccination as well.
Yeah.
Do you think
we'll probably be the last ones to get it? Maybe Joe will get it before we would, with his job.
Yeah. Do you think the likelihood of there being a medication for the treatment of COVID's more likely than the vaccination of it? Great, because obviously that's what you're working on, isn't it? And you're not actually looking at vaccinations, you're looking at treatment, aren't you?
Yeah, treatment, and trying to find out what the virus needs to enter the cell. So which doors and windows the virus needs to get inside. I think these are two key aspects that lots of virologists are working on now. So I think this is probably easier to do. I guess some drugs, you've probably heard lots of stories in the media that there are some drugs that are already being trialed. Trump talks about them quite often. I think the ones he's talking about maybe aren't the best ones to use.
Really? I've just recently, because obviously it's something to do with the ACE. There was ACE2 inhibitors have been mentioned as well now.
Yeah.
Have you done any work on that? Is that true or?
Yes. This is one of them. So this is one of the proteins that I'm looking at, and or receptors, and lots of other scientists are looking at as well. Yeah, I think if we could find out all these different kind of windows and doors and ports that the virus needs, because the virus goes on a journey. It will find the cell, the part of the cell that it needs to attach to, which is ACE2 is one of them. Then it will go through and kind of go around the cell and then replicate and then go out again. So if you can use a drug to stop one of these different phases, then you can stop the virus in its tracks. So there's lots of targets to look at. And lots of drugs, I'm sure, maybe some of the ACE2 inhibitors or blockers. I don't know if they're really, I don't know how far along they are. I haven't read all the papers I need to do. But yeah, there's so many papers coming out now. It's crazy. Every day there's hundreds of papers.
So in your line of work, you obviously have to keep up with the relevant research, and then you're obviously trying to add to that research. Is that correct? So you're saying really what you need to do is you're reading research as much as you're actually trialing the drugs that you're trialing, or
wow.
So
because if you find that the virus goes in a certain direction, you may read a paper, and so with the ACE2 work, which generally well accepted that this is a very important receptor. So then you would then focus your research more in this direction. If someone else comes up tomorrow and says, oh, protein or receptor B, C, D, these are also important, then you can also look for drugs that are already in use that could maybe stop and close off these doors.
Right.
So yeah, just keep reading papers, and if someone finds something interesting, then you can take it and put it in the lab and see if you can also work on this as well.
So in the lab, when you say put it in the lab, so how do you
Oh,
actually?
yeah, so someone in France says, "Oh, this drug seems to stop the virus from replicating." Then you can also take this drug. You can buy it from a company probably, or make it yourself, and you can test it and see if this also has an effect.
Wow.
Wow.
That's
So, and
like,
and I bet there seems to be a bit more transparency between countries now in terms of scientists working together, just because, it needs to, like you say, with that, if somebody does, you want to talk about trials being held and, clinical trials, and how fast they can get it out there, and because how fast they can learn that it actually works. You've got the whole world pushing together here. I think that's from somebody that doesn't work in that sector and anything like that. It's quite nice to hear that will be the case, that scientists are passing it back and forth and passing knowledge and publishing papers. It seems to be every single day. It seems to change every single day, wouldn't it?
Yeah. There's I don't know how many papers are published per day now, but when you think about it, the first papers were published 4 or 5 months ago, when the virus was first detected. It takes a while to detect it and publish it, and now there's thousands of papers being published. And what's also quite interesting is because so many different labs are working on it and with totally different backgrounds. So you get a nice interdisciplinary approach. So it's not just the typical virologists who are working on this virus. You get people from all different areas of life science.
You're hoping the virologists actually figure it out, though, yeah. You're a bit slightly like, oh no.
It'll be a joint effort, though. I think all these papers are just moving us a small step forwards in the right direction.
So is there somebody within your lab critiquing the papers before they're sending them to you, or are you having to critique them all yourself and do it yourself, or what?
So what's quite interesting is of course, if we find something, then we share the information. If we find, because we're all looking on our laptops, or most of us are in home office now. So we go to work when we just need to do work in the lab, wet work. But if we're doing reading, writing, then of course we should do this at home. But yeah, if someone finds a paper, then we share it with our colleagues. Even in the last few years, you see more and more on Twitter now, or podcasts. There's different ways of disseminating the information. Some on Facebook and Instagram as well, but I think Twitter seems to be quite popular.
Really, that's interesting.
Yeah, that is interesting. That really interesting. For me, you're talking about podcasts and things like that. From an outsider's point of view, obviously you could listen to the news, BBC News over here and things like that. But what made me more aware of the seriousness of this and how quickly it was going to spread, and how it could spread, etc., was listening to podcasts, listening to doctors actually on and scientists on podcasts, and listen to them talk about things like this, because I've known that they've been about that this could happen, pandemics could happen through to a coronavirus and things like that. But when it actually happens, you realize how little I didn't actually know. So I've learned so much in the past 4 to 5 weeks, just been sat at home listening to absolutely anything I could get my ears around. It's getting to the point now, though, where I'm kind of a bit like, I need to switch off a bit. And just sit out and wait, because it feels like I feel myself like it could go on for quite a bit longer than it actually is. I know that Germany seems to be opening a few small shops and things, but I think normality it is quite a long way off. How do you feel about that yourself? Like, you're in Germany. We're in the UK, 2 separate places, but I feel like no matter what, both countries and all the countries all over the world are not going to go back to normal for a long, long time. How do you see yourself, your own personal opinion, it's going to look in a year's time?
I guess a lot will depend on if we have like the holy grail of a vaccine, and if it's been administered to enough of the population. I think in 12 months, this is quite optimistic. Because even if, like I said, the vaccine's there in 6 months, you have to produce a lot of these little glass vials and vaccinate a lot of people very quickly. So I guess, I guess it will be at some level of what we've got now. So there'll always, I think in the next 12 months, there'll still be social distancing. It probably comes from what I hear from other scientists or news outlets. The general consensus seems to be it'll come in waves. So in the UK now, it's not looking too good. Maybe the current situation with the number of deaths, but maybe this will change in 3 months' time, and then it will be reduced to a relatively low number. In other countries, it may shoot up again. It may oscillate a bit in different countries until we have a vaccine or a really, really good, maybe palliative drugs. Probably need more than one, maybe.
Yeah.
But yeah, I guess it will be. I don't really know if it really will go back to normal. I wrote an email or messaged someone a while ago about normal. I was thinking normal because what's it like now and what it was 6 months ago. They're worlds apart, and I think the world was definitely, it will change. So thinking back about just how people move around and how we work, like working from home, I could foresee that maybe we'll have 4-day weeks. So we could spend 1 day a week at home. It depends on what type of job you do, of course. If you work for Aldi or Lidl, it's difficult to spend a day at home.
Yeah.
Technology is not that far along yet. But yeah, I guess thinking of climate change as well. I'm sure we'll maybe lose less oil. It'll probably speed up and push along some things that were changing slowly anyway. So maybe more public transports, less uses of cars. The internet system will get a bigger boost here, probably across the world as well now. So yeah, we can hopefully spend more time working from home and less time maybe commuting long distances, flying across the world. It'd be interesting to see.
Yeah, you just reminded me of something that I saw just not long ago, and it's just saying there, just pulled up the US oil prices of the demand for it has dried up so much that they've never seen it as low. And I think it's like, and that's like just one part. If you're talking about climate, like you said, with climate change, because there are positives to this situation, and just how much the world seems to be able to breathe at the moment is a really positive sign, and I hope it's hard because I really enjoyed normal life before, but I also didn't enjoy the way the world was actually going, the human race was actually going in terms of the way it was treating what we have. So I don't know. I don't think it's going to go back to normal, I think, ever again. Obviously, we can't afford the economic disaster that's happened and that is happening. It just can't afford to happen again. I think it will happen again. There will be other viruses, but there has to be a way to deal with it faster and than it has been dealt with, which is tough, really, because you've got to cut people some slack to a certain degree. This has come like this. Was it November they first discovered that it was COVID-19, and they called it COVID. Well, it was discovered COVID-19. So it's November, and from November till we're in April now, and people are talking about the middle of trying to flatten the first curve, because obviously they're talking that there could be a second one, there could be a second wave. So I feel like they're doing everything they can do to batten down the hatches. But I feel like, I don't know, normality myself, social distancing, I think supermarkets are always going to be the same now for a while, for a few years. I think you're not going to be able to, you're going to be queuing up outside. You're going to be, in the checkouts. You're going to be obviously 2 meters away from each other. That's not going to change for a long time. I think there's going to be a lot of places I'm a tattoo artist, and it's really strange for me because there's nothing much I can do. I can't work 2 meters away from my customer, so I think masks now, no matter what, are going to be, and it's so strange because we spoke about this before, Joe.
Yeah.
Trying to get my head around the idea that we're all going to be wearing masks for the foreseeable future. I mean, I'm not doing it yet. I'm not doing it now. I'm obviously I'm in my house, but I'm not doing it out. I don't go out and I don't wear a mask. I think it's going to get to a point where you're looked down upon if you don't wear a mask because you're choosing to not conform and do everything you can to keep hold of the lockdown being eased. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think that's a good point, especially with masks, because there's the 2 types that probably all heard of. One will probably stop you from getting the virus, and the other one will prevent you from spreading the virus. So I think if you're not wearing these cheaper surgical masks or cloth masks, that will stop you from spreading the virus. I think you're right with people maybe frowning on you or looking down at you, or I don't know, taking a wide, just keeping a distance from you. If you're not wearing these one masks, irrespective if you're coughing or not.
Yeah.
Coughing, then, yeah.
What's the likelihood of this happening again then, Graham, with your background and what you know about viruses? Was this, obviously it was expected in the field, it was quite expected, but is it likely to happen again? Is this a thing that's going to be just part of life from now on?
With this particular virus or future?
Future, this one, either.
Yeah, I guess there's, you have the influenza. So we always have different, it depends, from what I understand, depends primarily on how good the influenza vaccine is. So then you get seasonal peaks and troughs. So I think this year the vaccine was pretty good. So I looked at the numbers in Germany. I think it was a couple of hundred deaths. I think 2 or 3 years ago, they estimated it was over 20,000. But
that's from having a flu jab, basically.
From actually people dying from flu.
Yeah.
So I guess I don't actually have the numbers, but I'm assuming roughly the same number of people get the jab every year. I guess that year the vaccine wasn't as effective as other years. But yeah, going back to your other question, I guess there's every 50 or 100 years they expect a new pandemic. I guess the chances, in some ways, it will increase because we're a very commercialized, networked, interlinked society now. Where you saw how quickly this virus spread around the world. I think a few hundred years ago, this wouldn't be the case because it would take you a long, long time to get from China to Africa and then to Europe. Whereas now you can do this in a day.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm sure. So in the last few years, we had SARS and MERS, Ebola as well. And now the new SARS-2. So this is in the last 10, 12 years, 15, 16 years. And this is already 3 or 4. But on the other side, we've got lots of clever people working in the area. New technologies, everything's evolving, better surveillance. So maybe a lot of them can be nipped in the bud before it really spreads very quickly.
Yeah, and I think this one, if people weren't aware of it before, or they weren't listening, or anything like that, I think this obviously now has been pushed in everybody's face so much that there's nothing that people won't do now to not make this happen again. To try and stop this from happening again. Obviously, like you said, and you can't. This is going to happen again. I think we're quite lucky, if you could say that. I mean, I haven't died yet from it, but like we're quite lucky that it's not so it's not such a severe virus, and that it's not as contagious as it could be. It's very contagious, obviously, but it's not as contagious as it could be. You know, when you look back, it's forced me to look back at, you know, the Spanish flu, and obviously going way back to the bubonic plague, and the numbers. And obviously back then it's so different so completely different to the way we live now and what we have now.
Yeah.
But the numbers are just uncomparable. You know, like it's scary what could actually. I didn't do myself a favor. I remember the first week of lockdown, I watched a film called Contagion, and it kind of set me. It didn't set me off but it kind of got me thinking. Wow, you know, like this obviously is projecting, and obviously we won't find out for another year, 2 years, just how many people did actually die. And I think we're at so far 2.5 million people infected worldwide. And I think, like, is it 200,000 people have died or around about that? I don't know. America have got a massive amount of deaths, you know what I mean? But it's such a big country.
What's happened there? You know? Is it just due to the size of the country? It's like, you know, like per 100 people, it would be the same as similar to the rest of the world. What's gone on there?
That's a good question. I don't actually know why America is the way it is. I guess it's maybe they weren't quick enough as other countries were. So that could be one reason why it spread so quickly. I think I saw some reports with this, was it the spring breaks, where a lot from New York went down and then they spread it around and then scattered themselves around the country again. Maybe if they had introduced a lockdown a week or two earlier, then this wouldn't have been the case. Yeah. But with the number, I know when you said 2.5 million cases, I think this is way underestimated.
Yeah.
So in the UK, I think we're at 140, 50,000, 30,000
total cases. 124,000 so far. I've got it on Worldometer up here. There's about 124,000 cases and total 16,000 deaths so far. Just what you were saying there as well, though. Like, I think when I watched a documentary about when it first came about in Wuhan, and you know, we were talking. You alluded to before, like it's a perfect time for a virus. If a virus was an army, to actually be like, look, this is the perfect time to infiltrate and attack the world, to attack humans to a certain degree, because they've got planes flying out all over the place, from here, there, and everywhere. It's perfect for a virus to do its thing, you know. And also you were talking about spring break in Wuhan. It was the Chinese New Year, wasn't it? When in about December. So just as this was coming about and there were people being infected with it, boom, they were all just starting to spread out of Wuhan, and it was all starting to, you know, mainland China, and everybody was going out, you know, like going here, going there, going everywhere. And it was just at that point, pivotal point, where it kind of shot the virus out. And it's just crazy to think that, you know, and that's when I started thinking about it. It's like, this is not going to stop now, you know, like, they can put a lockdown and try and contain this and try and get the numbers down and sort of flatten the curve to a certain degree. But trying to contain this and get back to, like we'll talk about before, normal life is just, it just seems so impossible at this point in time, you know, to completely rid the world of COVID-19 is never going to happen now. I think it's just always going to be here.
Yeah, I would never say never, but not in, it would be, I don't know, maybe a decade, because you think of the other diseases that we've managed to eradicate.
Yeah, true.
So, yeah, so polio is almost there, and smallpox. But yeah, this would be a massive challenge to really get rid of it. And of course, like New Zealand, they've done very well. Germany is getting to the point where I think the R number, so the number of people that one person will infect, is now below 1. I think it was 0.7. So this would mean that if 10 people have the virus, then before they recover, they'll infect 7. So over time, then this will slowly go down, in theory, die out. But then, of course, Germany is a country surrounded by other countries. And sooner or later, you want everyone to mix and mingle again. So New Zealand, the UK in theory, Iceland, Isle of Man, these countries, I guess, could just shut down the borders and live happily ever after.
Yeah, so this is another thing as well that, you know, like in terms of economy, a lot of airlines are on the brink of of complete collapse. And, you know, I cannot imagine right now for quite a long period of time airlines getting back up and running again. They're not going to. I think Richard Branson came out and he was looking for a loan from the UK government of £500 million, and you know, and he was trying to plead to them about this. But airlines, I had quite a few holidays booked this year, and I was supposed to go to Greece in July. It's just not happening. I can't imagine we are going to kickstart planes flying from other countries to other countries for a while. They were talking about there was rumours today of pubs in the UK not being open till Christmas now. I'm just saying, I don't think airlines are going to be fully operating for a long time.
No, we actually live near an airport. So Hanover's got a smallish airport. And normally at night or during the day, you can sometimes hear the planes take off if the wind's blowing the right direction. And I haven't heard a plane for weeks now. A couple of helicopters, a few like these small biplanes, you know, just 2-seater Cessnas, something like that. But the proper 100-seater planes, I just haven't seen one for weeks now. It's a shame because I can't visit my parents now, and my parents can't visit me.
Yeah,
my grandchild. So hopefully the UK doesn't shut its borders and lives happily ever after.
Yeah. No, you need to come back and stay back. So are you? I know this is a bit sort of a leading question, but are you when you move jobs into the job that you're doing now? Are you still doing the job that you would have done? I know you've everybody's changed, but are you happy about that, or is it an issue for you? Is it something you don't really want to be working on, or what was it you were wanting to do with your career initially before all this happened?
That's an interesting question. So I joined the lab because I thought it was a really interesting lab. It's got a really good reputation and they do good science there. The group were all nice and friendly. I thought I could push on my career here, do some nice experiments and publish some nice papers. Working on norovirus and potentially help lots of people who get this disease either acutely or chronically. It's quite an important disease. I didn't realize how many hundreds of thousands of people die every year. But yeah, this is the plan. But now this has become quite a challenge to really push on with this project, not least because it's difficult to really work full time because of the social distancing rules, but also the nurseries are closed. So me and my wife both work. My wife's also a scientist. And one of us has to stay at home. So one works, we have 2 shifts, one works in the morning, one in the evenings, and we swap around. So it is challenging working. But of course, with this new topic that we've switched to, personally, it is, of course, scientifically very interesting. But I think morally, as a scientist or even as a virologist, you really have to go for it, push as hard as you can to try and get as much information and try and make a difference. So I'm happy. I'm happy with the situation, but the type of work, just on personal notes,
you're still inspired to help people, and it still is helping people, and that's how you see it.
Yeah.
So we need people like you that understand these things to the next degree and the next level. And congratulations on your new job, even though it wasn't exactly what you wanted to do. But please stay with it.
Yeah, honestly, man.
Have you got any hobbies outside of work at the moment, Graham? What do you do, sort of, obviously?
Yeah, so my son was born just over 2 years ago. So
yeah,
congratulations.
Thanks. Yeah, this links up to my hobbies very well. So my hobbies have obviously changed. So so in January 2018, he was born, and just before then, I was playing football 2-3 times a week. Maybe 6 months previous, I was playing football up to 5 times a week.
Wow.
And riding my bike, I don't know how many hours. We used to live actually in the city centre, so I used to ride my bike to work and play football 3-4 times in the evenings or weekends for a local team. And then we bought a house in the countryside, so it's a bit further away from football. So then I just played maybe twice a week, and maybe once a week and once every 2 weeks. And now with the current situation, football stopped quite abruptly. So yeah, I guess my hobby is getting rid of weeds in the garden at the moment.
Yeah. It's so crazy what parenthood does, isn't it? You wouldn't change it for the world, but how different life is. I always say, like, I think it was like 2 months into being a parent, I remember saying to my partner at the time, I can't remember what I used to do with my spare time. Like, I can't,
So are you doing anything specific to keep your immune system healthy, Graham, or can you tell us anything about that, or is there anything that you've discovered in your research which you think that's really interesting to do with immunology, your immune system?
Yeah, I remember I had my PhD defense, I think 6-7 years ago now, and the last question was if they should drink this German yeast beer, so Hefeweizen or Weizen, because there's lots of beta-glucan in it.
Okay, yeah.
Because I spent 3 years working with beta-glucan in fish, and beta-glucan's a part of like a cell membrane that you find on almost all plants and yeast, and this does kind of modulate your immune system a bit. So I guess the answer is I do drink a few beers from time to time. Yeah.
Beta glucans, correct me if I'm wrong, I could be wrong, but I believe they help in lower cholesterol, don't they? Are they something?
Yeah, that's also been shown, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So I was looking at, they used for, you can either get them as dietary supplements, as little pills, it's everywhere now, powders as well that you can put in foods. I was looking at how, I did work with lipids as well, but I didn't look in this direction. So with cholesterol and other lipids. I was looking at white blood cells, so neutrophils, to see how this beta-glucan can improve the function of these white blood cells. But beta-glucan's been shown to do quite a lot, yeah. It's definitely not unhealthy. So eat your salads, drink lots of beer.
and eat your oats. Eat your oats.
Yeah.
No, I think there is quite a slew of things out there that can really highly affect your immune system. It's just I just don't know. I think in general, I think people should just try to not eat crap. And live a healthy life, and not be, not carry excess body weight, and they all contribute to helping your chance of survival when things like this happen. That's what I seem to have learned from this since this came out, and the way it seems to affect people. You know, I've never seen more people, you know, with smokers and things like that. You know, people seem to be stopping smoking now because they're like, oh, when all along they've known all along that it's not healthy. You know, so I don't know. I think there are a slew of things, but I don't know. I don't know if things will change after this. One thing seems to have changed for the good at the moment, while things seem to be like the way they are, is people seem to be going running a lot more and going on long hikes where they didn't used to. I think Strava have gone through the roof, as well as Zoom, who we're using right now. Like, these apps seem to have just been like, boof, you know, since this has happened.
Yeah, I know my parents are going walking pretty much every day for a good hour and a half. Yeah, I think it's great. Hopefully people are eating healthier as well. I don't know if this is the case. I haven't had a doner kebab for 5 weeks now.
I suppose, yeah, positive maybe. No, I don't know. Dude, honestly,
have you got any, I know you probably may not be able to digress this, Graham, but have you got any predictions on possible drugs that are going to be or any of the top drugs that may be used against the virus?
This is a good question. So we'll be discussing a paper tomorrow in our journal club, and there they've tested dozens of drugs. There's the one that the Trump always talks about, is chloroquine. Is it chloroquine?
Yeah, hydroxychloroquine.
Yeah, hydroxychloroquine. This is, of course, when you're working with them on cells, this is quite a different situation, because it's quite a big difference between like a little plate of cells that you can have in an incubator to an animal or a person. They're very simple and not as complex. So yeah, it's difficult to say. I think if you're screening all these drugs, then you will end up with loads and loads of hits. But I think it's a bit early to tell yet. I know there's some in clinical trials, but I'm not sure how far along they are or what the results look like. I think with this hydroxychloroquine, I think the number of patients that they tested on was relatively small.
Yeah.
And of course, it has lots of side effects.
Yeah. Including death. What do you think about the relaxation on the clinical trials? How the FDA has not been as strict or stringent on these in human trials? Have you come across any of that?
I've heard about it, but personally, I don't have anything to do with this. Yeah, I guess it's also with vaccines. When it gets to the point where vaccines will be tested, then you're going to probably have to relax the rules a little bit. Otherwise, it really will take a long time to get a vaccine. So you'll probably have to weigh up the pros and cons. Yeah, I'm not sure how exactly they've relaxed it. I think some of the ways you can probably cut a few corners if you're using something that's very, very similar, or if it's already been approved. So if drugs have already been approved, then it's quite easy just to give an anti-cancer drug that's been shown not to harm like a healthy person. Then the risk is quite minimized there. Because if it doesn't work, then worst case is you're just giving the patient a pill, and it probably won't worsen the patient's condition. And if it does work, then maybe you can save this person's life. But if it's something completely new, then it probably is wise to do lots of testing along the way. The typical way will be in cell culture. So someone like myself wearing a white lab coat, you can put whatever drug you want on the cells, and you can do lots of tests on it to see if the cells, how they react to it. And of course, if it can stop the virus from entering, replicating, spreading from one cell to another, or other different assays. And then normally you'll go to animals, which I know a lot of people are against this. Of course, it depends if there's an animal model for the virus bacteria that you're working on. And then you'll see how how this works and what the results look like, how the animals respond to this, and then you could move to patients in small scale and then larger scale. Yeah, I guess it's an interesting discussion. I haven't, if I'm honest, I haven't had much experience in the kind of the later stages of this.
Yeah, so you're sort of right at the beginning.
Yeah.
You're seeing good results in a culture, in the lab. Will then you pass that information on to then for animal testing and human trials to other labs or.
I think with the vaccines, I think there's one or two that have skipped the animal trials. I haven't gone straight to patients, but I've heard about it. I haven't read about it, or I don't know why they did this or why they could do it.
I think somebody was saying that because they can sequence stuff now, they can skip animal trials because they can sequence the outcomes within humans. But I do not know how that works. It's very interesting. Very interesting. Do you think animal trials have good comparisons to humans, or do you think there's a lot of flaws and that's why people are against them? Or what's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, this is a great question. It's a topic that kind of scientists can talk to non-scientists about forever. It's a nice topic with ethics, and then science is also mixed in there. And so in some ways, yes, they are helpful. In other ways, they're not so good. I think it depends on what you're really looking at. So obviously a small mouse is quite different from a human. In some ways, some things are similar. And it also depends on what you want to look at. So even some types of fish are closer to humans in some ways than a mouse is to a human. So then you could use a fish for certain studies. The other way, which is what my old university, my old group was doing, is try to make the cell culture model more complex. So you can go, there's a huge difference between having one type of cells on a little plastic plate to a mouse or a human. So there's ways where you can have like kind of ex vivo, you can take a part of in theory human, so you can take maybe a good example would be like a cow's udder. So when you go to the abattoir, the cow will then be slaughtered and chopped up into steaks or whatever, and the udder would then just be thrown away or used for, I don't know, maybe dog food, cat food. So in theory, you could then use this udder, and then you can use the whole system, and you could then test certain drugs or creams or infection scenarios, which is then a step further towards kind of real life. And you can do this with other groups of cells as well. So you can have, instead of having one cell type, you can have a mixture of cells. You can change like the oxygen concentration. So if you're working kind of with intestinal cells, then the oxygen concentration is quite low there. And if you're working with lung cells or in the esophagus or the trachea or in the mouth, oral cavity cells, then the oxygen concentration will be higher there. So you can also modulate the oxygen concentration so it makes it more realistic.
No way. Is it okay? Right. Yeah. I wouldn't have even ever thought about anything like that. That's really interesting.
Yeah, there's lots of groups trying to make these in vitro cell culture models more realistic, because then the results are closer to what happens in real life.
Yeah, of course.
And in theory, then you would need to use less mice, less monkeys or rabbits.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
That is super interesting. Super interesting. So, Sorry, Graham. What's your sort of future look like then? Have you got any predictions? What you're going to be doing in the future? Can you see yourself be working on this for quite some time, or do you think you'll actually get back to
the norovirus?
Yeah, I think that's a good question. I haven't really thought too much about my future. I've just been thinking more short term. So the next 2 to 4 weeks, 6 weeks, so the experiments I want to do. Yeah, I think with me working in the lab, it will depend on kind of what the rules the government sets for society. So especially with the nursery, then if my son can go to nursery again, then we can both work pretty much full time, in theory. If this isn't the case, then yeah, we're stuck doing half days or working, starting early in the morning, then playing with my little son, and then going to work late at night again, or something like this, which you can do for a while, but yeah, eventually, yeah, you probably see my hair's changing color.
Yeah, preach, preach, Graham. It's one of those. Like I've got my son with me all the time, and then I get my daughter as well, intermittently, and I love them with all my heart, and would lay down and die for both of them right now. It's just, but there's some times when it's just like, oh, nursery was such a godsend at times, you know, just to not even that. I think it's just to tire them out. I will play with the children, that's fine, but after a certain period of time, there's just, you know.
Yeah, it is. In some ways, it's great because I get to spend lots of time with him.
Yeah.
And yeah, but if you think about long term, then with work, it is a challenge. What I can do in the future. But yeah, short term is great. You can spend so much time with him. We're now running around and he points out the weeds that I need to dig out in the garden. So it's good teamwork.
Yeah, I wouldn't. I mean, in the UK, they're like the classing like nurseries are staying open for key workers. So, like, I presume you would be a key worker in the UK. Is that not the case in Germany?
Yeah,
because you're working on the exact thing that we need for this virus. You know, so that's a difference, I presume.
Yeah, this is a good point. Yeah, I wouldn't say I'm a key worker. I would never class myself as a medical doctor, or so I'm not. I wouldn't say I'm really that key. But yeah, I think we're discussing this with the nursery at the moment. There seems to be differing policies in different parts of the country, in different towns. So the situation will be sorted soon.
Yeah, do you think
you've got a really good...
Sorry, I think you do have a good case, but what you're going to say then, Joe, but what's the case then with Germany? Because I feel like myself, and this is just my optimistic, positive side coming out, that in England, I think in about a month or 3 weeks to a month, they're going to have to look at doing something with schools and nurseries, just because, I mean, maybe they don't, or maybe they do, I don't know, but the disruption it's going to cause for kids that are doing exams, etc. And then not only that, my son who's 3, he's about to be 4. I just found out what school he's going to, which primary school is about to start. I don't know when he's going to start. He's due to start in September, obviously, but the longer they keep him off, I've heard that when it comes to September, if they go back in September after the summer holidays, that the children that were in, say, year 2 will have to finish year 2, or in year 3 will have to finish year 3 in a segment of time before the people are allowed to start the next school year. I just think it's a massive disruption, which obviously, because of something so unprecedented, it has to happen. I don't know. I feel like schools is one of the things that they must prioritize. I mean, I know they will do. I know they are doing. I'm just saying, like, for myself, I think it would be a good thing to get the children back to school.
Yeah, I guess there's lots of, I think here you probably need a psychologist as well. And maybe this could be a future guest in your podcast.
Yeah.
I'm by no means an expert on psychology of a 2 or 3 year old, but you can see how that is different. I think when you're older, when you're just before finishing your GCSEs. So I guess this is a situation where there's quite, I don't know how many GCSE students there are in the UK, but tens, hundreds of thousands about to sit their exams. I could understand, just open the schools to, or find some way of, I'm guessing, to sit their exams, because otherwise you're pushing it back, and this causes problems for then the A levels, and then A levels going on to university as well. You kind of stopping the system there, especially when you're not too far away from finishing it. With the other years, I don't know. I think in Germany it seems to be the older pupils, they're getting priority.
Yeah.
So our sons were kind of at the back of the queue, which I guess is understandable. But I think on a personal note, with a 2-year-old, just looking at the toys on the floor, he's happy playing by himself. But like, he hasn't seen a kid for, I don't know, six weeks now. Or he's seen them in the distance from the window.
Yeah.
He hasn't played with them. And of course, I'm good at building castles and playing toot trains and this type of thing, but I'm not the same. So I think, I don't know, like maybe for their development as well. This probably will become an issue when they're trying to jump from, I don't know, playing with his little trains by himself to then joining a class of 3-year-olds who can supposedly hold a pen and draw and because we also noticed when he started mixing with other kids that he kind of, his development kind of jumped up a bit. So leveled up a couple of times.
That is an interesting thought.
Yeah.
Just, I don't know if you know anything about this, Graham, but you know, like it doesn't seem to affect kids. The virus doesn't seem to have as much effect on kids, but obviously they are asymptomatic carriers of the virus, I presume. Is that right? Or
from what I understand, maybe it will take a bit longer for the research to be done on this. But from what I've read and understand is that I'm not aware of any people that are more resistant to the virus, to becoming infected, and then showing symptoms. From what I've read, that younger kids, their immune systems are more naive, so they don't overreact to the virus. So they become infected, but then they don't have more of like a kind of autoimmune
inflammatory kind of like reaction to it.
Yeah. So their immune system will work against the virus, but it won't become overreacted, and then you don't get the massive inflammation in the respiratory system. So this, of course, if they've got other diseases or other complications as well, then it can also affect small kids. But this is kind of my understanding of what I've read, which then may be a reason why they decided to close the nurseries, because they can carry it for several weeks, infect people, and then you're none the wiser.
Yeah.
So it's 7 weeks, is it?
Well, yeah, the incubation time could be up to 2 weeks. And I've read a few papers that show that they can detect the viral RNA sequence in different fluid samples for at least 3 weeks after these symptoms have stopped.
So
3 weeks after the symptoms have receded.
Public Health England have actually just released a thing saying that this isn't an airborne virus, obviously because it's through droplets. What's your thoughts of that, with like the virus surviving on surfaces and within the air and things like that? What do you think about them releasing something that's saying it's not an airborne virus? Does that make sense to you?
Well, I have to read what they exactly said there. I think with I guess you probably also read the news reports about how long this virus remains active on different surfaces.
Yeah.
So, probably based on this. I guess I have to read what they said. But with so I've seen this report as well, and I'm not sure if it's been actually published yet. So this paper, I'm sure it's scientifically correct. What's happening over the last few years, and especially the last few months, lots of papers are being put online, and you can read them, and news agencies will then cite them and use them and take what they want from them, which is great because it can speed up interaction between scientists because you can read and get access to results quicker. But the paper's results haven't been kind of proofread by other scientists. So this peer review system hasn't taken place. But I'm sure the majority of the results will turn out to be correct or are correct. But with the surface story, I think it was 1 day or 24 hours for cardboard. So your typical Amazon packages, and up to 3 days for, was it metal and glass?
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah.
But this was done under laboratory conditions. So this is quite different. So there they put a certain amount of virus on these surfaces. And this is quite different from what would happen if someone coughed on a cardboard box.
Yeah.
Of course, it's not. Yeah, you've got the environmental conditions, so you've got humidity, temperature, also the amount that's on there. I doubt someone's going to hold up a box and really cough on it. You don't have all the enzymes as well that are in your mouth, which will also degrade the virus. So I think these numbers are, I'm sure they're true in a lab, but I'm not sure if you can really kind of use them for real life.
Yeah.
It's funny how you critique things like that. Did you read that and spot that straight away? Or was that just like instant? That's probably not right, due to your background and in looking at papers and critiquing papers and peer reviewing things? You think you?
Yeah, I don't know. I guess as a scientist, you have to be critical, which is good, because you should always question other people's results. So even the results I get, I also have to question them, and other people will also question them and say how you can improve them, what's good, what's not so good. I guess this is kind of how scientists are trained.
Yeah,
how they're wired in their brains.
That's science, isn't it?
This has happened to you before? Have you ever published anything and had somebody critique it or anything like that?
Yeah, so whenever you publish a paper, it's always read by at least 2 other scientists who work in this field. Sometimes 3 or 4, maybe even more in some cases. And then you have the editor as well. So there's at least 3 independent, unknown, normally scientists. So I don't send it to my mates. It's someone from...
Somebody who you paid.
Yeah.
Somebody on your faculty. Yeah. So is that a nervous time for you when that happens then? Because you've spent your time, publishing this, researching this work, and you've spent, an X amount of hours doing this, and then all of a sudden it's in somebody else's hands and somebody else's eyes looking at it, and you're like, oh, I hope they're seeing what I'm seeing. I hope this is right.
I guess normally I would present the results either in lab meetings or group meetings, or even at conferences, which of course we can't attend anymore. Either as a poster, or I'll have an oral presentation, and I get some feedback from other scientists. So it's normally not like a surprise, because normally I get certain questions, but you get certain questions and then you can kind of try and answer them in the lab, or write the paper in a certain way to explain it differently. But yeah, it's always kind of, I don't know if I'm nervous, but I don't know, intrigued, or I'm always kind of waiting just to see what other people think of your work. I guess that's in all walks of life, whatever you do. If you're an artist or a tattoo artist, I guess it's also, I don't know how you feel about that, Lee.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I think it's one of the things where there's people always going to, no matter what, you're always going to get I think critique's good, isn't it? You know, like it's super important, isn't it? In absolutely anything, I think you can go through your life with a small town mentality, thinking everything you touch is gold, and then someone comes along and says you got that bit wrong, and then you're like, I did get that bit wrong. You know, and it's super important for critique for anyone. It's the only way you can get better, and I think you need it, don't you?
Definitely, yeah. I think, of course, it will improve you as well as a person, as a artist or scientist or whatever.
Yeah, definitely.
You welcome the other. So, I think we probably need to wrap this up around there, don't we? Really, that's fantastic. What you're doing for everyone, Graham, and keep up the good work, mate. Let us know if you get any insights or anything towards these drugs that may be, working against the virus, and we'll hopefully speak to you again soon.
Yeah, because it's a constantly changing situation as well. So if it changes dramatically, then hopefully we can get you back on again. But yeah, as well from me as well, man. Thank you for coming on. It was really, really interesting. I learned so much from you.
Yeah, it was good to. Yeah, thanks for inviting me. It was nice to have a good chat again. It was nice.
Cool, man. Cool.
Yeah, but it's an ever-changing field. I think it's a hot topic, and yeah, there's maybe in a few weeks or months the world will be completely changed again. What I've noticed is you see that different countries seem to follow on from other countries. So if you think what China was like a few weeks ago, and what Germany's like now, and what the UK will be like in a few weeks, I don't know, maybe we'll all be wearing masks.
I think so.
Yeah. This is what they're debating in Germany now. Some areas have kind of told you have to wear masks. I think some of the other European countries have done it as well. So this could be the next step for the UK.
Yeah, they're even talking about, sorry, we're supposed to end it there, but it's the idea of even talking about if schools are to start again, you know, where's their PPE? You know, like, where's their protective, you know, where are they going to be wearing masks? What's the deal with all that? You know what I mean? Like, I know you might consider they don't need it to a certain degree, but people are always going to be like, especially because they've realized how serious it is, they're going to be like, what am I just going to go to work with loads of children and get this thing? But, you know, that's the case, isn't it? How many people are going to be, and then they've got to produce all these masks, you know?
The teacher coming in with a Bane mask on. There's got to be some teacher that does that, gets a Bane mask. No, then.
Well, I was saying to my wife, I bet this is going to be a big future, like, because if we're wearing these masks for the next couple of years, however long, it's going to be designers with the Cheshire Cat smile or whatever on, or Bane masks.
Yeah. I've already seen in my field, I've already seen a few tattoo artists who are currently doing no work at all, designing masks with their logos on and things like that, and people trying to sell them, but it's crazy.
Yeah, maybe we have all Facebook masks or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah, but listen, man, thank you so much. I'm conscious for taking up your time, and it's late. It's late here. It's 10 o'clock here. What is it? What time is it there? Is it 9?
11. We're an hour ahead.
11. So yeah, I'm really sorry, man. But thank you so much.
Yeah, thank
you. Take care, guys.
All right, take care.
Bye.
Bye-bye.